Welcome to Recruiting is No Joke. I am your host, Joel Lalgee, the realist recruiter. It is great to be with you this week. We have another, not to put pressure on the guest, but we have another amazing guest with us today. I know we're going to get a ton out of this conversation. I'm super excited to be here with you guys. And Tom, welcome to the show. Why don't you give everyone a quick intro, like who you are, what you do, and who you do it for.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Recruiting is No Joke. This week's episode was brought to you by Talent Llama. Talent Llama is the AI interview platform for high-volume knowledge worker hiring. It helps teams screen faster, fairer, and without the chaos. Instead of sorting through resumes or juggling calendars, Talent Llama gives every candidate a fair, low-pressure, skills-based voice interview. No more awkward scheduling, no one-way videos, just natural conversations that highlight real skills. And because evaluations are instant and structured, slow response time and ghosting are a thing of the past. You move faster and the candidates feel seen, not forgotten. So check out Talent Llama today. Talent Llama is refreshingly candidate-friendly, a solution for the future. Thanks so much, Talent Llama, for supporting this week's episode. Now back to the episode.
Great to be here, Joel. Thanks for having me. So my name's Tom Lott. I run talent acquisition at Appleman Leiden, BAL, a global corporate immigration law firm. Spent most of my time in financial services. And in the last 3 years, I took a jump out of financial services and into the legal industry, and super excited that I've done that. But I've been in talent acquisition now for, I don't like to say this long, but I've been doing it for a quarter of a century. So
that's good. I like that quarter of a century. Usually I just say like a decade. I already think that makes me sound dull, but quarter. No, what did you say? Do you say a quarter of a decade?
Quarter of a century. Quarter of a century. Yeah.
Oh my God. I wonder if there's anyone that's made it to like a full century in recruiting. I'm sure it's like Lou Adler and Jerry Crispin.
Right.
Right. That's awesome. Let's just get some perspective here. I mean, 25 years in talent acquisition and recruiting. What did things look like when you got into the game? I mean, and did you start like in-house? Did you start an agency? Like, how did you get started?
Yeah, when I started, it was DOS computers and, the little dot matrix printers and whatnot.
Fax machines? Were you rolling with fax machines back then too?
Yeah, fax machines. That's right. Yeah, and horses. We had horses. I did start on the agency.
Wells Fargo, you definitely had horses. I know that.
Yeah, that's right. We started over on the agency side. Actually, I was in the military 8 years. When I got out, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And, like a lot of people that I've listened to.
Were you doing recruiting in the military as well? Or
No, I was on the deck of an aircraft carrier. So
I love that.
It was fun.
Well, thank you for your service too.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I got out of the military because my wife didn't want to move every 2 years. So we got out of the military and I was out in San Diego looking for a job. I stumbled into a staffing agency and just so happened I met the owner and he's like, hey, you know what? Have you ever tried recruiting? And I'm like, what is recruiting?
Classic.
So, yeah, it's pretty much how we all get into this, right? So on the agency side for a while, and then I was working with financial services clients. And one Saturday morning, I got a call from a staffing leader over at JP Morgan Chase. And he said, hey, why don't you come in-house, come over to the dark side and see what we can do together. So I ended up in-house and been doing that pretty much ever since. Worked at the RPO a couple times. Outside of that, it's been all in-house.
That first role at a staffing agency, then were you doing like call center positions, like hourly roles then? Like what types of roles were you recruiting for?
Yeah, it was mainly direct placement, financial services. We did some biotech, pharmaceutical, a little bit of light manufacturing, et cetera. Yeah.
Very cool. So did you know, like once you even started in kind of like the agency world and then you figured out like, all right, there's like, we're obviously agency, we're third party, there's these in-house teams. Like, did you kind of know right away, like, yeah, I'd prefer to be in-house, or like, how did that kind of develop?
Yeah, I think I didn't really know what I didn't know. And then when I went in-house at Chase, I really liked being able to coach leaders and in all things talent acquisition. It was just really unique challenge. When you're on the agency side, you've got this us versus them mentality sometimes. And I think that
No, I don't. I do not have that mentality. Us versus the hiring managers, maybe. That's how I say it.
There's real beauty on the agency side, and there's real beauty on the in-house side. And it really just depends on, I like to say there's beauty instead of pick your poison, but really there's challenges on the agency side and challenges on the in-house side. And I've just found that being able to be in-house and really get to know that client well, that hiring manager, that leadership team really well, and be able to advise and drive them towards making the right hire was just something that I really enjoyed.
It's something I've been thinking about a lot because obviously we see, maybe particularly right now, right? We got a job market that's competitive, extremely competitive, especially for corporate positions. You know, they just revised the numbers from that jobs report. I just heard the news about it on Friday, and it's like way lower than they had originally reported. Talking to leaders all the time, we got thousands of applicants. You know, we got all these people applying for jobs. And because of that, it creates an environment where, you know, recruiters obviously being kind of like the face of hiring, they get a bad rep, right? We just get a bad rep for like dropping the ball and ghosting, and sometimes rightly so. But what I think is really interesting that just never gets talked about is the role that hiring managers play in the hiring process, which is unusual to me because they're called hiring managers. So they're the ones who are like actually have the need or actually wanting to grow their team or needing to grow their team. It just doesn't get talked about a lot. And I also think within recruitment conversation, there's a lot of conversation around technology and systems and how to make things more streamlined and all this other stuff, right? You got vendors who are disrupting the industry. But regardless, you could have the best recruiter, you could have the best process, you could have the best tech. Ultimately, if you're working with a hiring manager that is difficult for whatever reason, it's a challenge. And I think more emphasis needs to be put on what you just described, which is the coaching, the working with hiring managers. So when you even describe that, you know, it sounds like pretty early on in your internal kind of tenure, you were already doing this in coaching. Like, what are the sorts of things that you're coaching managers on? And like, what does that look like? Just so, you know, people have some context there around what that actually looks like.
I think it really depends on the actual individual manager, but everything from hiring biases, that's always a big one. And, you know, we all like to think that we're not biased until somebody holds a mirror up to you and you're like, oh my gosh, I do have all these hiring biases. But hiring biases and just overall interviewing, I found, particularly in the legal industry, they teach you in law school how to be phenomenal lawyers. And I work with just phenomenal lawyers, but they don't always teach you how to run a business, nor do they teach you necessarily how to interview and make those great hiring decisions. So coaching leaders on interview questions, how to interview, things that really come second nature to you and I, you know, taking a step back and realizing that that's not second nature to your hiring managers. And they do have a quote unquote day job, helping them out in all aspects of things that we take for granted and just really is part of our breathe in, breathe out daily DNA. I think that's really what we have to coach our leaders on. Pretty much everything A to Z from the hiring process.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of these hiring managers too, they're not necessarily hiring all year round. Maybe they have a few needs, right? And so it's like, it's not like they're doing interviewing all day, every single day. I mean, you mentioned biases, right, within the hiring process and like helping people understand, which I love the way you put that, right? Just understanding like, hey, everyone has bias. It's important that you kind of recognize that within yourself so you can grow. But what are maybe some other areas that you've seen consistently that are a challenge for managers that you've kind of run into? Or like, what are some of the tips that you give to managers?
The most common one that we run into is just the like me bias. I think we all want to be a part of a group. We all want to belong. And when we're interviewing, we try and look for somebody that is going to be like me. And they have those biases. Like, you know, when you start talking about having those ice-breaking conversations, you're looking for something that's going to signal to you, oh my gosh, this person is like me, or they're not like me, and therefore I may not necessarily like them in their interview or paint their answers in a different light. And so like me bias is definitely something that we run into quite a bit. And we try and coach people on stripping that down in a way and looking at the candidate from the perspective of a skills-based assessment versus the job description. Can they actually do the job? Is there ability or a need to necessarily coach them on, maybe they're an 8 out of a 10 on the candidate scale. Is there an ability to coach them on 9 and 10 and get them into the role quicker so that you can go ahead and reduce that opportunity cost from that opening and just go ahead and make sure that they're not playing into their internal biases of like me. So if that's the clearest answer for you, but Like
No, it's great.
like me biases are definitely something that comes up time and time again, and we always have to fight against it.
Yeah, you mentioned like the skills based hiring as well, which I think is we're seeing a lot more of that, right? And I
Yeah.
think we're going to continue to see a lot more, obviously, as technology increases and it kind of gets, it's just going so fast. It seems like you're not going to necessarily be able to rely on just like experience, right? It's like no one has 50 years of chat GPT experience, for example. So we need to understand like, what are your skills? What are your problem solving skills? Like, how do you actually react in situations? What are some of the tools that you've put in place, or what are some of the things that you've seen work that actually work to be able to transition from like just pure experience based hiring to like how do you start to evaluate those skills?
Well, one of the things we looked at from a legal perspective is we looked at what makes a really great attorney. And one of the things that historically we were always looking for was the pedigree of the law school that the attorney may have attended. What they did in law school, were they on law review? Did they go to Stanford or Yale or Harvard or whatever the case may be? That was one of the things that we were looking for, that experience, if you will. What we found after doing an assessment was, quite frankly, that what makes a really great attorney in our world is they're phenomenal writers. And so they could have gone to, XYZ school, but they were on law review and they have written excellent cases. And, we found that skill in and of itself trumped the ability or the experience, if you will, of somebody going to a great law school or working from a great law firm, a great competitor law firm. The fact that they're a really great writer made them very successful here.
How do you test out? You just have them like write something, or you have them show the writing that they've done in the past?
We get them to show us the cases that they've written in the past, with obviously things that are redacted, that are protected. And then we also actually ask them to do a writing sample based on their actual interview, what they learned from the interview and what they learned about BAL. And that's actually proven to be pretty successful from a writing perspective.
Because I think about this like in other industries. I think that's a great example. Like, what advice do you have for other talent leaders that maybe aren't in the same space, of like how they could start to look at the positions that they're recruiting for, the bad thinking, like, they're kind of hiring the same type of person over and over? How would you have them start to figure out like what skills are needed, and like how would you approach that problem?
Yeah. You do what we did, and that's look at the most successful people that you have in your firm right now, and then identify the skills that they have, and then try and replicate that in the interview process. Instead of trying to look at the job description and tweak the job description to try and find something that's going to predict behavior, look at the existing behavior that you have in your employee base, your employee population right now, and then try and replicate that in your interview process.
Obviously, you're a law firm now and you've had financial services background as well. And obviously, you've been in recruiting for a long time. And just kind of transitioning a little bit here, what have you seen change in just recruitment and hiring over the last 25 years? And I guess what's changed and like what hasn't changed? Because that's that old phrase of like, some things never change. Like, what are some things that have never changed that you've seen?
Well, I think the one thing that never changes is just the overall relationship, right? The people aspect. And that's what we do. And that's why I love doing what we do. I think the biggest thing that's changed over the years has been technology. And right now, of course, everybody on your podcast talks about AI. And I talked about AI here at a recent conference as well. And
it's like you can't ignore it. You have to go in that direction.
You do. And I think there's big fear right now about, is AI going to destroy or replace our industry in recruiting? Maybe I'm a little bit of a rose-colored glass guy, but I personally believe that it's just one iteration of a number of iterations we've had over the last, couple decades. I mean, if you look back into the 90s, it was Monster was the big monster that was coming for all our jobs, right? And then in the early 2000s, it was social media that was coming for our jobs. And then in the 2010s, it's RPOs are coming for our jobs. Now here we are, and it's AI that's going to come for our job.
What are some of those? I'm just curious to bring you back to like, let's just talk about like Monster for a second and like the job board. What were some of the things that people were saying like about that and about how it was going to replace recruiters, and like what's the similarity between that and like maybe like what people are saying about AI?
Well, it's going to replace the relationship. It's going to replace the middleman that, Monster was going to replace the middleman that is the recruiter between, we're going to replace the candidate and the hiring manager. And therefore there would be no need to have a recruiter, right? Same thing with social media, same thing with AI. And the reality of it is people want to deal with people. And I think that relationship component is never really going to truly go away. And that's why recruiters play such an integral role in our overall economy. And I don't think that we get a lot of hate and a lot of bashing, particularly online. And I don't think we get enough love for the role that we play between bringing a candidate and bringing a company together in a way that's meaningful. So
only thing I think about, all right, and this is maybe a little bit random and out there, but I agree with like, people have that and you've probably seen it too in like financial services, right? It's like the ATM. It's like I worked in a bank and it was like we had the automated teller machine. Right? But every single Saturday we had a line of people that literally would line up, and I'd even try and be like, hey, you could just do this on the ATM, right? Like you do the exact same thing. Like, no, I want to go see this teller. I want to go see Susie, right? I got a relationship with Susie. I met with Susie every week for 20 years. So there's like that aspect. What I think is interesting is I read something not too long ago about a lady that developed a relationship with like one of these AI chatbots. And then I see like kids, I know it's wild. And then I don't know if you're on Snapchat, but on Snapchat has like a chatbot, like an AI chatbot, and like Meta has the same thing in their DMs as well. To me right now, I think we're at this point where like with some of these tools, especially the chatbot, it's like this texting almost like with, I think some people are actually feeling like they're almost having that relationship with a human, even though it's technology. It seems like there'll always be that preference for humans. We've seen it with a couple of companies that have gone all out, right? Like, oh, we'll get rid of all of our customer service reps and we'll put in AI, and it's kind of backfired. But I do wonder if maybe it will be a little bit more 50-50 on people. I've also heard people make comments of like, well, I'd prefer to talk to AI over a human. Humans are kind of judgy, like someone I interviewed on the street, I was like, would you rather have AI interview you or a human? And she was like, actually AI, because I don't know, like anytime I've had an interview, like I just felt like I was getting judged by the other end. So
isn't that like funny too? I mean,
I know
that's hysterical because one of the big knocks I hear against AI is that AI has built-in biases, and I'm like, well, I don't know about that.
It's got built-in biases, but it doesn't judge. Like, and also there's like an aspect of you're going to know like, if you're with like, you're going through like an automated process, like you kind of know everyone else is getting like that same service as well. The thing that we've got going for us is also like one of the things that can limit us, which is like, because we're human, it's like people get that human experience, but it's like, we all know like the human experience with someone on like a Monday morning can be different to like a Tuesday afternoon. There's that component. But anyway, so these job boards, all this technology, all promises to take the middleman away. But in your experience over the past 25 years, quarter of a century, the relationship has not gone away. It's like, it's all relationship. Like even now, like lots of applications, it's like still relationship is just huge, right?
Right. Yeah. Going back to something you said earlier about candidates, us getting bashed for ghosting candidates, and sometimes that can be justified, but there's a real anger out there amongst the candidate population, at least what I've experienced, when they don't get the job, or there's a real joy from a candidate when they've been looking for 6 months and now all of a sudden you're able to offer them a job. And these are things, that human connection, that I think that AI won't ever really truly be able to replace, at least not in the near future. I mean, maybe, who knows, someday it may be able to, but I think that human connection is something that we all crave and we all want, and we're social animals. I mean, that's just part of our DNA, and that's something that hopefully we'll be able to add value in the near future, just really building that relationship between the candidate and the hiring manager. Now, there are things that technology has been able to do for us quite a bit and made us a lot more effective. I mean, I've been leveraging AI at BAL to really streamline our overall processes. We've taken our time to fill from like 77 days down to the low 20s, high 30s just in the last 6 months. And our interview to offer ratio has gone up, from 25% to about 75 to 85% in the last several months too. So there are things that, from a technology perspective, that AI certainly really has been able to usher in some really amazing things for the recruiting industry. But at the end of the day, we are a people business, and it's people first and people last. And that's what we do best.
A couple of things here. Time to fill, time to hire. Like, just walk me through like how you're looking at that and like what that looks like. Because I also think for like candidates who are out there listening to this, that might just sound like insane. Like 70 days to like, for a role to be open, and like thinking like, geez, that's like,
yeah.
like 2.5 months, man. Like, what is going on there? But just like walk us through, like, number one, like what that actually looks like, and like when that start is, and like when that like official time ends. Like, what's that whole process look like?
So we're measuring time to fill from the moment that we open a requisition to the moment we close it, meaning that they've gone through the background process and they're actually in the onboarding phase, doing their onboarding paperwork. And in our industry, in the legal industry, time to fill is a little bit longer than what I had experienced in the financial services industry. Now, I've been out of the financial services industry for the last 3 years, so I can't really speak to that, but
it's probably slow over there.
I would imagine so. If a candidate were listening to this, I think, explaining to them why it does take so long to get a rec filled, I think that would be something that would be really beneficial to them. I mean, a part of it is the fact that, unfortunately, a lot of companies view recruiting as a necessary evil and an expenditure. And so therefore they tend to look at recruiting as something that, they can cut costs in. And so usually internal recruiting groups are a little bit smaller than what they need to be. But, just having the ability and the resources and the time to be able to go through hundreds and hundreds of applicants and give them, quite frankly, the time that they deserve. We have this philosophy here at BAL where if you spend 15 minutes to go in and apply and fill out your application and all the questions that we ask you, you darn sure expect or should deserve to expect a call back or an email back or some sort of communication. We don't want you to go into a black hole. But point is, the reality of it is that there's not as many recruiters out there would provide a speedy, fast time to fill. It's just a part of it. The other part of it is we have to deal with hiring managers who have day jobs and hiring managers who have pretty busy schedules, and trying to get those interviews scheduled in a timely fashion is sometimes a big challenge. So there's a lot of things that go into factor into that time to fill, but been able to utilize AI to streamline that process substantially. And what I'm most proud of is just you being able to utilize AI to whittle down that time where a recruiter used to spend the majority of their time in an interview on the phone or in a video with a candidate talking about those individual skill sets. Do you have this particular case file? Do you have this particular type of experience litigating, et cetera, whatever the case may be, to now it's all about, tell me about your passions, tell me about your motivations, what really drives you in your job. Are you going to be a culture fit here at BAL? And so what used to be a tiny sliver of time that you could spend really getting to know that candidate, by leveraging AI to handle that front end process, we've been able to now open up a chasm where the recruiter can really spend time talking about and building a relationship with that candidate, what drives them, what makes them tick, et cetera. And so that's been fantastic. And that's really helped us drive down our time to fill, but also drive up our interview to hire ratio.
So the AI is being used more as in like the screening process, kind of like what we were talking about earlier with like the skills assessment. That's freeing up then time for your human recruiters to like understand the human, what drives them, who they are, whether or not it's like the actual right opportunity, versus spending time to kind of verify this other information, which really could just be screened quicker through with a tool, it sounds like.
Right. And there's other things that I think really help out, like the transcribing of the interview itself to put it into a well-branded format for the hiring manager. And then there's the interview scheduling itself, being able to use AI for all those different time sucks in the past, and instead allowing our recruiters to spend a lot more quality time with the candidate has been just a godsend for us.
You hit the nail on the head right earlier where you said there's a lot of fear surrounding AI. Talk us a little bit about that, because obviously you're interacting with leaders, you're talking to, leaders in talent acquisition, leaders in business all the time. When people are approaching things from that fear perspective, that fear mentality, like, how do you kind of coach them to really see, we're not trying to eliminate like the human side of the job, we're trying to enhance it. How do you kind of coach people and get them to see, and like what, I guess, advice would you have for somebody who is in that like perpetual fear cycle where it's kind of like blocking their curiosity, or like even like limiting what they're able to accomplish because all they see is like fear and like red lights of like your job's getting replaced?
Well, I'll tell you, in the beginning, when I told my team, hey, I'm going to be looking at leveraging AI to do the first part of the interview process, I wouldn't say it was a revolt, but it was pretty darn close. I think that they were all thinking that, okay, here's Tom looking to replace my job. But they were freaked out.
Did you send them like a meme that just said like AI won't replace you, but someone who knows AI will. And then like just a picture of you, thumbs up.
The most overused meme out there.
I know.
No, but they were scared, and rightfully so. I think that we all have fear naturally of the unknown. It's ironic that one of my most, wouldn't say critical, I would say she's vocal, and she had a lot of concerns about this. And she came to me probably about 2 months after we had instilled it and gone through the process and integrated it with our applicant tracking system. She said, I got to say, this has been really great for me because now I can spend so much more time with my candidates, and I really like that. And it frees me up to have more time with my managers and advise them and give them more guidance on the hiring process. So I guess I would say I just believe that we need to embrace this and try and control it as much as we can. At the end of the day, it is a fearful time right now for recruiters and what we're going through. But just like everything else, if you look at history will prove out that this is just another iteration and the evolution of what a true recruiter is. So I'm a big believer in embracing the fear and just trying to wrangle it and use it to your best of your ability, because it's here, whether we want to deny it or not. I think the talent acquisition groups that are putting their head in the sand and not acknowledging AI are really the ones that are going to fall behind. Like, we're trying to 2x, 3x, 5x what our recruiters can do. And it's the companies that aren't leveraging AI that are still operating at 1x that are going to fall behind.
You've implemented tools. It sounds like you've got like a system in place. Walk us through a little bit about that process, because I think that's number one. I know every single leader who is listening to this right now, everyone has pressure right now associated with AI. Like, you got to do something with it, right? Like, you got to figure out how we're going to use this. So like, walk us through like that process and like what that looked like for you to kind of like land on what you've landed on. And then obviously you've gotten the results. I mean, you've decreased time to fill. You've got, your placement success rate has gone up. So you're seeing some tangible ROI there. But like, how did you kind of start to map out the process and figure out like, okay, these are the areas that we need help with? Because I think that would also help people, instead of trying to reverse engineer it and like listen to pitches out there and go, do I have this problem? Like, how did you start to assess, here are the areas that we could use some help with? And like, here are some kind of tools that can help us with that?
Well, it's a great question, because I think that every company right now seems to have an AI solution, and every company is promising the moon. I mean, it's,
how many pitches a day do you get for AI tools, do you think?
Oh man, at least a couple. It's definitely the nom du jour out there. But I think that, taking a look at least for us, we wanted a system that was going to streamline the process, and wanted the system that was going to help us out with interview scheduling. We wanted the system that was going to help out with, we didn't want an avatar. We wanted something that was going to be a little less, I will say creepy, but a little less creepy.
Yeah, a little less Black Mirror.
Right. Right. A little less Black Mirror. That's exactly right. But we also wanted something that was really going to make sure that, the big bias word, the big B word out there wasn't going to make our internal biases worse. We wanted something that was going to make it better. And so we landed on a company called Talent Llama, and they do a great job for us. And the integration has been really, really great. But we knew what we wanted. We wanted something that was going to streamline. We wanted something that was going to really look at biases. And they partner with Fair Now, I think is out of Virginia, that audits not only Talent Llama, but also audits our process and our job descriptions for biases. So,
and you're in the legal industry. So it's like, you've really got to pay attention to like, is what we're doing legal? And like, is it in line? Is it compliant? Is this something we're not going to get tripped up on? Because that's going to make headline news if it's like, legal firm like uses illegal screening.
Right.
Not good.
Yeah, we definitely involved our general counsel. We involved our IT and security departments to ensure that everything that we were doing with Talent Llama was above board.
Awesome.
And so, but it's been a great process for us. It's been a great experience for us, and very excited for what the future holds, Talent Llama, and what we're doing. And, we look to constantly improve, and there may be other aspects out there that we can leverage AI in our interview process. And if so, we'll look to do that as well and add on to Talent Llama. So it's just a matter of
how often are you like looking and auditing processes? And then obviously we just mentioned like you're getting pitched a lot, right? For tools. So like, what are the sorts of things that you like look out for? Because obviously you've got limited time in a day. This isn't just like your whole day. It's not like you're just demoing stuff all day, but like, how do you kind of audit and then like kind of keep an open mind to like different things that are coming out. And then obviously just keeping up with this tech as a whole. Cause I think that's where it can get overwhelming, right? Where it's like, even if you watch the news, you're like, all right, ChatGPT 5 with agents is out. So like, oh man, now I got to do everything different. Like someone showed me today through like a Chrome extension that you can have like an agent do stuff. So it's like, how do you kind of like stay focused, know what your process is, like get better, but like not get just like overwhelmed and not just start chasing like every single shiny tool that comes your way?
Well, you got to set aside time to do it, right? Time to do it and time not to do it. And when I'm getting pitched by these vendors, I usually put them in a folder and I'll say, okay, in 6 months, we'll go ahead and schedule something. The month of September is going to be our month to look at different tools and resources. But,
see, now everybody knows they're just going to have that clock. They're going to be like, all right, DM Tom in 6
as an
months.
As an example, the month of September, right?
Are you checking your folder today?
Right. No, it's I think it's just a matter of setting aside time to do it. And we do a semi-annual audit on our processes and, go through everything with our general counsel and our IT and security department to make sure that everything's above board. But, I try not to look at these vendors that come in every single day because you can just get sucked down into it and everybody's promising the moon. The reality of it is, I think that it's not quite there yet. Like I read a book, AI for Good by Diana Sai. And really, yeah.
Totally. I love that.
Great book. Great
She's
book.
amazing.
It talked about, pretty robust timeline to not replace talent acquisition, but definitely change our entire landscape. And I think it's a really great book, maybe a little bit more of an aggressive schedule than I think will happen. But
I think she said 36 months or something.
Yeah. Hopefully it won't be 36 months. Hopefully it'll be a few years after that. But nonetheless, you got to really take a look at all these AI companies because they do promise the moon. And I don't know that it can always deliver, but our experience has been really great with Talent Llama.
I think it's almost like you got to have that perspective of what's going to actually make the recruiters on your team or people on your team like better. I think when you have that mentality, like I love that story of that recruiter who's just like, I don't want to do this, this could take my job. And then that turnaround of like, no, actually this has made my job way more enjoyable. Because I think one thing I've noticed is, and this was from sitting in a room with someone who was an internal recruiter during the pandemic. It was like one of my friends, he was an internal recruiter. And I was there and I'm like running a business, so I'm like the cool guy in this like little space we're working in. And I just observed him. And it was like, this guy is one of the most passionate people I know, really good with people, like loves connecting. But it was like so much of his day. And this is 4 or 5 years ago. So much of his day was like moving people through this like pipeline, this process. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I'm moving this person from here to there. I'm just like, well, when are you going to talk to someone? Well, I got to do this first. I got to generate this report because I got this meeting coming up. I'm like, well, when are you going to talk to someone? Well, that's late, but then it was like, I'm watching him do that. And then as soon as he did talk to someone, it was like the energy came back in him. And it was like, that's who he is. That's why he got into this game, is to connect with people, to talk with people, to learn with them, just to connect with them. That's why he does what he does. I love that kind of like that story, but I think it's a lesson of, let's look at like, how can we make our recruiters shine in the thing that they do best, which is dealing with people, connecting with people, like connecting. That's all about. I never met anybody in recruiting be like, yeah, the moment I was like on that ATS, ooh, it felt so good to like move someone. It's like no one, man, that report on that dashboard. I mean, there's some weird talent ops people who are probably like love that stuff. But like for some most of us, it was junkies, like, people were just like, man, I love that. Like I was reminiscing about my first placement and about how like surreal it was of like, this person's like happy. Like I helped them, and it was like the company was happy. I hadn't experienced that feeling before because it was like always in sales, like, oh, the company's happy, but you kind of, it's like we're getting commission. But it was like this moment of like, wow, this person's happy because they got this new opportunity. They're getting paid more. They got more opportunity. The business is happy. And it's just like, there's no feeling like it. And that's why we're in it, right? It's like to connect, to know people. So sorry, that was like a really long ramble about that. But I'm just saying that because I love that kind of perspective. We are coming up for time here, trying to shoot for like 40, 45 minutes. I would love to just know, number one, give us like your prediction of if you were to like just sum it up, like your prediction for like 18 to 24 months for like what a recruiting role will look like, and then what you think recruiters should really be focused on right now, just people who are looking to grow their careers, like what would you have them focus on?
Oh gosh.
We'll hold you to it too.
Right, exactly. There's a lot to unpack there. I think from a recruiter perspective, what they should focus on first, I think they should focus on keeping up to date with the technology changes as much as you possibly can, because you don't want to get left behind. You don't want to be, if somebody's talking about some cool thing in AI, you want to know about it. You want to know how you can leverage it, if you can leverage it, rather than just be caught flat-footed. But in the same coin, on the other side of that coin, don't lose that people aspect. Don't lose what got you into recruiting to begin with, which is that passion around people and helping people and making a positive difference in people's lives. That, we can't lose that. That's really who we are and what we do in recruiting. What was the other part of your question, Joel?
Like 18 to 24 months.
Oh, 18 to 24 months.
Yeah, 18 and 20. So a year and a half, 2 years. Like, where do you think we'll be at, like, if we had this conversation again?
I think that there will be more agents. I think we'll be a little bit further along in agentic AI, but I don't think that the landscape's going to change that dramatically. I think that, you're starting to see, at least I'm hearing people starting to see that AI is slowing down a little bit, but I could be completely wrong about that. I mean, we could have the robots in our houses tomorrow, as far as I know, but I don't think it's changing quite as fast as what a lot of people are predicting.
I would just keep I know going kind of back to Black Mirror, I mentioned it. Black Mirror, for anyone who doesn't know, it's like a sci-fi show, which
Great
kind
show.
of embodies the future, kind of plays like the darker side of what things could be. So it's like kind of like very similar. But there's one episode in particular where it's like this guy goes out, gets in a car crash, and then dies. And his wife then starts getting text messages, and then have a phone call with him. And then eventually she ends up ordering like this, like basically like this robot version of him that looks like him, sounds like him, but isn't him. And it's like there's this moment in the show where there's like, she realizes like, yeah, it's similar to him, but it's just not him. It's not the real him. And so she just kind of stores him in the attic for her kid to like go and talk to occasionally, which is kind of weird. But where I'm really struck with that is like, we're already kind of at that point even. Like, I know like you can do a lot. Like I could create an agent of myself now to create content and do all this sort of stuff. But the thing that always stuck in my mind with that episode is like, that is the human aspect. Like you just can't, people connect with other humans. Like, and a piece of technology can kind of like fake empathy, but it's never going to have empathy. And at the end of the day, like us being humans and being able to empathize, like when someone says, hey, I've gone through this really tough time, that's why I've been out of work, or I went and looked after my family, like AI might be able to be like, well, that, like, sorry to hear that. But it's like, sorry to hear that sounds way more real and empathetic from a human, because there is actually empathy there.
Right.
So it's like leaning into that. But I'd love to know, like, just so people can connect with you, like, where's the best place for people to connect with you? And then are you going to be out and about in the next year, like, so people can have a chance to meet with you in real life as well?
Yeah, I'd love to go to Recruiter Fest next year.
Breakfast, let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Looks like it was a blast this last year. So best way to reach me is just on LinkedIn, Tom Lott at LinkedIn. Just reach out to me and DM me, and love to connect with people.
I love it. Well, guys, go connect with Tom. And I think the value that you're able to bring in this conversation too is super helpful, particularly just for, people who are looking to lean more into AI. And guys, as always, if you reach out to Tom, just let him know you heard him on the podcast. Be patient. He's not on LinkedIn all day like me. And then as always, if you've got questions for myself, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. You can also go to www.therealistrecruiter.com. And we'll be back next week with another episode. If you got questions for myself or the guest as well, let me know. I'd love to get some questions answered on this show. But Tom, thanks again, man. Really appreciate your time and glad we could do this.
Thanks, Joel. Really enjoyed it.